Initially, Elden Ring Nightreign was met with a lot of skepticism. How could a game centered around learning and overcoming challenges work in a dynamic world? Turns out, it worked surprisingly well when handled correctly. Sure, the Metacritic score of 77 is nothing next to the original 95 average, but it proved the concept can work. Something that Serpent's Gaze wants to offer their own spin on. Sure, it doesn't have the same pedigree, but there is a lot they can do in this unusual space. While we need to wait a bit for the full experience, is the current early access version worth checking out? There really isn't much of a narrative. Outside of a small handful of collectibles and events, it's just a series of weird enemies to overcome. This really isn't a bad thing, just more about setting expectations. There isn't much of a story, even if you want to get lost in the lore. But that's fine, because the main selling point is gameplay.
You, puny servant, where is my supper? Hunger has arrived, and I require flesh. For appetizer, I shall require a pair of succulent kidneys. With haste.
Serpent's Gaze starts by introducing the core moves, these being attack, dodge, jump, secondary special, healing, and blocking. Basically, the usual controls except heavy was replaced with a secondary action. It also features a stamina system along with secondary and special attacks having charges. In addition to this are 14 classes and 11 weapons. Classes have 3 main differences, these being stat arrangement, initial relic, and passive ability. Relics are basically an additional power. They do things like heal, apply a debuff, or attack. Really useful, though bosses, events, shops, and other things will give other options. Weapons come with their own playstyle. Hammer is slow, dual swords are quick, longsword hits far, and you get the point. They also have their own stat scaling, so it's important to know when to invest in strength or dexterity. Weapons also give different special and secondary attacks. These vary, but for the most part special is an AoE, and secondary is a charged attack. Despite being rather simple, the real charm comes from the roguelike mechanics. Similar to Nightreign, Serpent's Gaze is a fixed location with enemies and obstacles changing between runs. These also follow certain rules, so every run is a little different. Basically, they have a handful of enemies and spawns you need to be aware of. From there are curses, which act as a wildcard. They are disadvantages that alter how each run will play out. Some are minor, like certain enemies spawn, to major things like a unique boss. Most of these are fine, with a few being an absolute nightmare. Not because of the challenge per se, it's more like, imagine the worst possible time for it to happen, and it will usually happen. At least, that was my experience with the boss, who isn't hard to fight on its own, but it can be a menace when accompanied by multiple enemies. Thankfully, players also receive a wide variety of boons to overcome these challenges. Runs will always start with 2 groups you can align with. Basically, the groups are random, but the perks are not. Aligning also doesn't change anything, at least that I noticed. Finishing a level gives another choice, one that may include a different group than before. Throughout a run are various flowers as well. These give the choice between 3 perks, which come in a variety of tiers and potential levels. The goal here is the same as any other roguelike. Select perks that synergize or provide a useful function. This is one aspect I really liked about Serpent's Gaze. It's possible to get a hodgepodge of worthless garbage or an extremely overpowered build. Weapons also somewhat dictate choices. For example, I love a perk called Spit Seed. It reduces your weapon's attack in exchange for shooting a projectile with each swing. With fast weapons, this is a fantastic trade-off, since you'll likely deal the same damage from a safe distance. For slow weapons, it's something of a nerf. The overall damage increase is marginal, with the benefit being non-existent, but that's fine since there are options that cater to each use case. There's also a blacksmith that enhances attacks. These have less options, so expect choices to be relatively consistent. The only thing I don't like is the lack of protection. For starters, rerolls are surprisingly expensive. You usually get enough for 3 rerolls or 1 in a health charge. As a result, you kinda need to deal with whatever fate gives you, especially if you want to save your currency for the shop or more charges down the road. Thankfully, this is an easy fix. Just reduce the cost or increase the gain, but I do think it sucks when starting a new run. Between each stage is a bonus event. These are a random encounter that either gives a set benefit or presents a frustrating challenge. These can be a lot of fun, though they're not that varied. Based off my experience, you either get a handful of vendors swarmed by enemies or gain the option to deal with a swarm. But one thing I like is a lot of these events give callings. These are equipable buffs that usually have a trade-off. The cool thing is, gaining a calling unlocks the ability to start a run with it, though I should note you can only start with one. That said, I have seen 8 of these and only think one is worth it. Honestly, they feel more challenge oriented, though I'm sure they have another niche. There are also optional quests that happen across multiple runs. These offer exciting rewards like weapons or classes. In a lot of ways, this feels like a game designed around multiplayer. Not only is it a lot easier, certain moves cater to that experience. Take the healing relic. I can effortlessly heal myself and nearby allies. It's invaluable for progression as it allows you to save on healing items. However, during boss battles, it's really hard to use. It takes so long to set up that it is impractical, unless someone else is keeping the boss busy. Solo, you can just consider it unusable. This also helps a lot with mitigating bad perks. Say a perk needs bleed to proc. As long as someone else can apply bleed, you're fine. Where I felt the biggest difference is in enemy arrangements. It's very common for 3 or 4 enemies to attack at once. Solo, it is a huge stamina sink that will greatly increase your chances of taking damage. In multiplayer, there's enough variance where you won't necessarily get rushed. It's a small thing that makes a substantial difference. On a basic level, this is a surprisingly demanding game. I mean, the minimum is a GTX 1060 with the suggested being a 3060. Not exactly extreme requirements, but when it's beyond things like Nightreign, despite having less, it really stands out. As someone on the lower end, I also experienced a lot of screen tearing on top of quirks like models ghosting when moving fast. It is also a really delicate balance, as increasing the picture quality tank performance. Not in an immediately obvious way, just enough of a delay to make things feel completely different. At least, I could beat it in lower settings, but the second I improved the visuals, I couldn't consistently dodge anything. There are also a lot of weird quirks, such as range attacks being very inconsistent. On one boss, their hitbox didn't cover their upper body, meaning a large number of attacks would go through the boss. This was also a common problem with dual blade secondary attack. The first would hit, but the second would consistently go through enemies. A huge problem when every attack is a risk that also depletes stamina. Beyond performance, it's not a particularly long experience. There are 2 locations, each taking roughly 90 minutes to complete. After this, the only content left are secrets and running different builds, and there really aren't that many secrets, at least meaningful ones. Despite its flaws and negatives, I still think it has a lot of potential since I had a ton of fun playing online with my friend. It captures a lot of the things I love about the roguelike genre, something several developers failed to accomplish. That said, it's going to be a rough road ahead. 2 levels, even with variables, are going to get stale fast. There is also a lot of things that feel derivative of the Souls games, to the point where I joked about doing a review with footage of similar things from those games. It's a minor thing that makes the experience feel like a lesser version of Nightreign than its own thing. Overall though, unless you're fine with a couple hours of gameplay, I'd suggest waiting for some balance changes. Hey, thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, don't forget to leave a like, and for more content, please subscribe.